Chronic pain, it's one of the most widespread and, frankly, least understood health problems out there. But what if a major clue to solving one of its most baffling forms has been hiding in a place we never really thought to look? This one question is sparking a total revolution in how we think about a condition that affects millions of people. We're going to explore some incredible science that suggests the answer might not be in our muscles or our nerves, but somewhere, well, a lot more unexpected.
So get this, 8%. That's the high-end estimate for how much of the world's population might be affected by fibromyalgia. To put that in perspective, we're talking about hundreds of millions of people living with a condition that has just been completely shrouded in mystery for so long.
And for those millions of people, this isn't some abstract number. It's their daily reality. It's a life of constant, widespread pain, crushing fatigue, and a whole bunch of other symptoms, with no obvious physical cause and very few treatments that actually work.
Okay, so to really get why this new research is such a big deal, we first have to understand the condition itself. So what exactly is this fibromyalgia enigma?
You can see right here just how complicated this is. It is not simply being in pain. It's this whole cluster of debilitating symptoms. We're talking severe fatigue, gut problems, issues with sleep and mood. But you know what the most maddening part is for patients? There's no clear physical damage that a doctor can point to, which has made it unbelievably hard to diagnose and to treat.
Yeah, this quote from a 2021 study it nails it. It perfectly captures the challenge for the entire medical community. It's this inexplicable nature that has left both patients and doctors searching for answers, and it's exactly why we so desperately need new ways of looking at the problem.
And this brings us to a really unexpected clue in our medical detective story. It turns out the answer might lie in this incredibly complex communication network that connects two parts of our body that seem miles apart.
It has a pretty sciencey name, the microbiota gut-brain axis. Sounds complicated, right? But you can really just think of it as a superhighway for information that's constantly zipping back and forth between the trillions of tiny microbes in your gut and your brain. It's a two-way street, all day, every day.
So this tells us that our gut is so much more than just a tube for digesting food. It's like a bustling chemical factory. The microbes living in there are actually producing things like serotonin and other chemicals that directly talk to our brain. They can influence our mood, our immune system, and, as we're now finding out, maybe even how we perceive pain.
Okay, so if this superhighway exists, researchers started asking a massive question. What if there's a kind of traffic jam or an imbalance in the gut, and it's sending all the wrong signals up to the brain, causing or even making the symptoms of fibromyalgia worse? And wow, the evidence they found for this idea is pretty incredible. When scientists compared the gut microbiomes of healthy people to those with fibromyalgia, they saw a really clear pattern. As you can see, the patients with fibromyalgia had a big drop in the variety of their gut bacteria and way fewer of the good health-promoting microbes. Let's zero in on one specific example. This is from a study on a closely related condition, chronic fatigue syndrome. They confirmed a huge drop in the gut's ability to make something called butyrate. Now, all you need to know about butyrate is that it's this super important compound our gut makes to keep inflammation in check. This deficiency showed a serious problem in that gut chemical factory. And this is where it gets really specific. Researchers found a direct link with a particular beneficial bacteria. It's a mouthful, Fica Lactobacterium prausnitzii. And what they discovered was that the fewer of these good guys a person had in their gut, the more severe their fatigue was. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a measurable link between what's in the gut and how the patient feels every day.
So all of this research led to a really wild, groundbreaking question. If a messed up microbiome is linked to the symptoms, what happens if you just replace it with a healthy one? Could you actually treat the pain by fixing the gut?
To test this idea, scientists turned to a procedure called fecal microbiota transplantation, or FMT for short. Now, I know it might sound a little strange, but the goal is actually really simple: to hit the reset button on the gut by introducing a whole community of microbes from a healthy donor.
And the first major clues came from a mouse experiment that honestly is pretty mind-blowing. First, researchers took gut microbes from fibromyalgia patients and gave them to healthy mice. And what happened? The mice started showing pain-like symptoms. But then, and this is the amazing part, when they replaced that microbiota with microbes from healthy donors, the pain got significantly better.
This was huge. It suggested the gut wasn't just linked to the pain, it might actually be causing it.
Okay, but what about in people, right? Well, the results in human trials have been just as stunning. In one clinical study, look at this, over 90% of the fibromyalgia patients who got an FMT said their symptoms improved. This wasn't a small change, this was a major clinical response, and it points to this being a potentially powerful new therapy.
So let's pull back for a second. What does all of this really mean for the future of treating not just fibromyalgia, but maybe chronic pain in general?
Well, the biggest takeaway is this. We've gone from seeing fibromyalgia as a complete mystery to actually having a clear target, the gut. The research is showing that by fixing the balance in the microbiome, you might not only reduce pain, but also improve things like anxiety, sleep, and even boost levels of critical brain chemicals like serotonin.
You know, this research is so much bigger than just fibromyalgia. It completely reframes how we think about the connection between our own bodies and the trillions of tiny organisms living inside us. It leaves us with a pretty fascinating question. What other complex, so-called inexplicable health mysteries could we finally solve by just listening to a gut feeling?